Thank you everybody for joining us for today's next Super Stock live stream with Valeo Pharma, stock symbol VPH on the CSE, and the CEO is Steve Saviuk. Valeo is a specialty pharma company. They're about to go onto the OTC market in the next couple of weeks. So this is a real opportunity for I guess anybody to kind of get in on the ground floor before all the Americans jump in. So Steve, let me, I want to kind of running behind, so I want to kind of turn it over to you.
Yeah.
Again, everybody in the audience knows our goal is to introduce companies with that, which have that 10x to 100x upside potential, and you'll tell them, we'll find out if Valeo is going to be that next big winner. Then we'll open up for Q&A in about 20 minutes. So Steve.
Okay, super. Well, thanks, Jack, for inviting us. And it's our first time presenting at your virtual conference, and when we look forward to doing so. Again, thanks for everyone for coming, and we look forward to introducing Valeo to you. Most of you probably have never heard of the company. We're a Canadian-based specialty pharma. Here's our forward-looking statement. We've been in existence. We were founded in 2003, where we were predominantly a dermatology and hospital products company. We've had, I guess, a couple of lives. Our first life was as a derm and hospital products company, and Valiant was pursuing us quite aggressively around 2013-14. We finally sold our product portfolio to them in 2014 for about 27 million. And we sold our products. We didn't sell the business, or we didn't sell the company per se. So we kept Valeo. We kept most of our employees. Some of our employees went off to Valiant in the transition. And we refocused our therapeutic focus into neurology, CNS, oncology, and the hospital specialty, which was kind of a holdover from our pre-Valiant sale days. 2019 and 20, the company has undergone quite a significant transformation. We listed our shares in January of 2019, so we've been a publicly traded company for about a year and a half now. Last summer, we launched a very innovative drug for the treatment of Parkinson's disease, and we'll talk about these in more detail later. But these are just sort of the events that have come through. We've raised over 6 million, as 5.5. That number has increased actually recently in financing since going public. Our revenues have grown by 50% from 2018 to 2019. We expect another 50% jump this year, and even more so in the years to come as a result of a number of products that we'll be launching. We've announced recently the acquisition of commercial rights for a couple of products here, Yondelis and Amatop for Canada. We received several weeks ago FDA approval for our first US drug called ethacrynate sodium. And we announced actually this morning that we have applied for listing on the OTC QB, and obviously our expectation is that we'll start on the QB and move up to QX potentially in the future, and then who knows, maybe the NASDAQ down the road. So what do we do? Who are we? Well, we're a Canadian pharma company, and essentially what we do is acquire the commercial rights to proprietary drugs for Canada. So these are drugs that are developed by companies in the US, in Europe, possibly in Asia, that don't typically have a presence in Canada and who are not expected to establish themselves in Canada. These are, as I mentioned, innovative drugs, so typically they're patents. They've just been launched in some of these foreign jurisdictions, so they're relatively new drugs. And generally speaking, we're looking for drugs that can change standard of care. So what would that mean is, number one, it could be a drug that addresses a medical condition where there are currently no drugs that do so, a drug that may have less side effects, a drug that may be just more efficacious. So we're looking at something that differentiates the drugs that we in-license for Canada. And when we say in-license, when we bring them into Canada, we do everything. It's from registration to the sales and marketing to all the aftermarket support that drugs typically need. We focused on 3 therapeutic areas for a number of reasons. One of them being the more targeted sales activities that we could undertake in those areas. Neurology being a good example, where there are 900 neurologists in Canada, and you can typically, with a relatively small sales force, you can access and impact the sales activities in that kind of therapeutic area. And we have a full infrastructure. There are a number of companies, both in the US and Canada, which have set up pharma companies that are essentially virtual, where they have no warehousing. Most of the services or the activities within the company are subcontracted out, and they keep a relatively small crew. We've gone more the traditional pharma model. So if you walk into our premises, we've got warehousing, we've got regulatory QC people, sales, marketing, order to cash, all within our business. And we think that has a lot of value to, number one, to ourselves, in terms of being able to better launch and control and monitor our products, but also our partners, our licensors, see that as much more of a traditional model and much more comfortable with the fact that within our walls, we have all of these capabilities. So currently, we have a number of products that we are marketing. We have 5 currently, which is led by OnStrive, which we launched last year, Ondansetron, and MS-LON. These are 3 of the 5 that generate currently the bulk of our sales. But what's interesting, and why this is such an interesting time for Valeo, and why we wanted to present at this seminar, excuse me, is the fact that we have a number of products being launched in the current quarter and in subsequent quarters. We have Amatop, which just got launched this week, Yondelis in oncology, launching August 10th, I believe. Sodium methacrynate in the US, also an August launch. We're going to discuss bioflavonoid. It's a bit of a spelling mistake there. It's VON, but in fourth quarter, very exciting product. And then really the product that has the greatest revenue potential for us is Redesca, which we expect to have a fourth quarter approval, a September approval, and a Q1 2021 launch. Our fiscal year is October 31st, and we expect to launch the product early December. And again, I'll get into more details. So what is the Valeo model? Well, the Valeo model consists of 2 essential elements: the base, which are certain, let's say, we'll call it steady, non-branded products that generate some revenue and generate margin to cover some of our costs, but have limited growth potential. And then there's the blue sky, the growth products. And these are our branded products. And these are the products that have generated a lot of interest in the investment community around Valeo in neurology, oncology, and the hospital specialty market. So again, the base provides that kind of steady income, steady margin, and we continue to add to the base, whereas the growth products are products that are not established in the market yet. We bring them into the market, we grow these products, and over a 5-year period, we go from essentially a launch to peak sales. We've got a very, as I mentioned, fully integrated company, and the management team is the same management team that ran the business when we sold, or prior to our sale to Valiant. We have national sales force, so really a fully integrated pharma company, and that's very attractive from an operations perspective and from an in-licensing perspective, as I mentioned earlier. Creating shareholder value. We're looking at commercial stage products. We're not looking at phase 3 products, and as you know, even regardless of phase 1, phase 2, and everyone's very getting good results in these 2 phases, there's approximately 50% of the products never get out of phase 3 or do not meet their endpoints in phase 3. So phase 3 is really the critical area. We're not investing in phase 3 because of that sort of low probability of success, or 50% probability. So no R&D risk. We're looking at products that have come out of phase 3, have either launched in another jurisdiction, or where we can assess the phase 3 data and determine whether these products can be registered in Canada. We also have another pretty unique characteristic, is that our inside ownership is approximately 70 to 75%. So we've got considerable skin in the game, so to speak. We've invested a lot of our own dollars into the company. And when I say that, I think the number is 8 to 9 million just from insiders. So it's really, we feel we're aligned with our investor shareholders. We want to build the company. We want the company to be valuable, and everyone should benefit on the same pro rata basis. So going through to the, in terms of this base, what I talked about earlier in the base, you have products like MS Lawn, that's a $6-7 million product that's been selling for many years. Ethacrynic sodium, we're selling it in Canada, just launching it in US, ondansetron, benstropine. These are base products that we're currently marketing. But we also have a regulatory pipeline, both that have been filed with Health Canada, was our regulatory agency in Canada. So we have antifungals. Generally speaking, these are injectables destined for the hospital marketplace. And we have 3 others here that are pre-filing. I think 2 of them should be filed by fall, and 1 probably by late this year. So this is what is in our pipeline as base, what is signed, what we're working on, and these are our peak sales revenue numbers that you're seeing on the right-hand side of your screen. Growth. Well, this is an interesting slide. These are the products that are going to drive the bigger value within to Valeo, and the first is OnStrive. We'll go into a bit more detail. Used in Parkinson's, Amatop topical anesthetic that we just launched this week. As I mentioned, Yondelis, our first drug in cancer, which is one of our therapeutic areas of focus. So we'll be launching that early August, and then waiting for Health Canada approval. There's actually 2 drugs waiting for Health Canada approval. One is Redesca, and one is our bioflavonoid. The bioflavonoid, we should have approval early August, and Redesca early September. And these 2 will materially affect our revenue, our top line revenue, and our net profit. But to get into a little more detail about just a couple of these drugs, OnStrive, we launched it last summer. It's first new treatment for Parkinson's to be launched in Canada in about 14 years. The Canadians have a higher per capita rate of Parkinson's disease than most other countries in the world, with the exception of the other Nordic countries. Interestingly enough, there is a relatively small number of doctors that actually that diagnose and initiate and influence prescriptions in Parkinson's. The number is somewhere less than 200. So we have a sales force of 6 reps that detail these doctors, and most of the detailing is done through movement disorder clinics. So typically, if their physician suspects they may have Parkinson's disease, the family practice doctor, the primary care doctor, won't make that diagnosis. They'll be sent to these movement disorder clinics, and these relatively limited number of neurologists are there to determine if they in fact do have Parkinson's, and then to initiate the prescriptions. So very interesting drug, very interesting. It's an add-on drug to levodopa. It is a drug that we estimate will generate 8 to 12 million of peak sales. One of the issues in selling any drug in Canada is who's going to pay for the drug. And as you know, you have a social medicine climate, you're looking at either the government's going to pay for it or private insurers are going to pay for it. So one of the interesting factors here is we did get recommendation for public payment in the province of Quebec. That should start in the fall, and that's what will help in terms of us reaching this peak sales estimate. Should we get other provinces in Canada to reimburse for the drug, you'd probably get closer to this $12 million range. If we don't, we'll be closer to the $8 million range, 65-70% gross margin on the product. So very strong contribution to our bottom line. Oh, sorry, I've got a bit of a snap there. Okay. Okay. I'm stuck here. Jack, I'm sorry, but I'm stuck at this slide for some reason. that I cannot.
It's a good slide to be stuck on.
Yes, thanks. I'm not sure why I'm not. Okay, there we go.
All right.
Another example would be Yondelis. This is so, as I mentioned earlier, we're looking to in-license innovative drugs in Canada. Sometimes you get us, you actually are fortunate enough to encounter an opportunity for a drug that's already being sold in Canada, but where there needs to be a change in the sales and marketing activities and the partnership structure. And this happened. We worked on this for about a year, and we signed the agreement with a company called Pharma from Spain in the late winter, and are launching the product in a couple of weeks. This was a product that Johnson & Johnson was selling in Canada. Pharma was the innovator. They discovered the product. They're taking the rights back from Johnson & Johnson in Canada and many other countries. They're leaving Johnson with the product, or Janssen, actually Ortho, with the product in the US. And it's currently selling about $1 million and has never been promoted by Janssen. So Janssen is a subsidiary of Johnson & Johnson. We expect that we can increase peak sales to about 2 to 4 million. Again, this is a very rare orphan type of cancer. Maybe 500 patients annually are diagnosed with this particular type of soft tissue sarcoma. There's a very limited number of oncologists, almost like kind of super oncologists that actually treat patients that have this type of diagnosis. And the sales force can be very targeted. And again, that kind of fits into our model. Amatop, another product from Smith & Nephew that many people might have heard of as an orthopedic company, hip transplants, knee transplants, what have you. They've had the product for many years. They sold it to the worldwide rights to a British company called Pharma. That in turn licensed us the Canadian rights. Again, hospital products, so it fits in oncology, neurology, hospital. Typically trying to keep our products in those three buckets. Main reasons are leveraging your sales force, developing more of a specialization, understanding and having relationships with key opinion leaders, which help to drive knowledge of products. So there's a method to the madness, so to speak, in terms of focusing on therapeutic areas and just being very good in those areas. And we have something coming up I think in Canada anyways, has got a lot of investors excited. About a year ago, we filed with Health Canada for a product that we've named Redesca. It's low molecular weight heparin, so it's basically an anti-clotting agent. It's getting a little bit of press, or actually a lot of press in the last few months, because it's used a lot in patients that do suffer from coronavirus or COVID-19, because it's not a direct therapy against the virus itself, but as you probably have read, a number of patients that do contract the virus have issues with blood clotting, and this is a product that is very good at handling blood clots. So its main use is in surgery or extended hospital stay. The market in Canada is about $200 million. We expect to be the first biosimilar in the marketplace. In Canada, biosimilars are actually growing quite rapidly in terms of their presence and their in the therapeutic areas. And we expect that this will be a big driver for us in sales, with very quick acceleration to $30 to $40 million of top line, and that, it's $200 million market, I should say. That 30, 40 could be substantially higher. The margins are good, so it's going to be a big contributor to our growth over the next few years. And again, one thing, if you look at a traditional product that you're building from market entry to peak sales, you're looking at generally 4 to 5 years. In the instances of biosimilars, because they actually compete with products that are already in the market, the sales growth is less than half that time. It's generally 18 to 24 months versus 4 to 5 years. So we expect these sales to materialize quite quickly. So our revenue forecast is, and you can see this this sort of very, I guess the traditional hockey stick that people like to look at. But our sales have grown from 15 to grown every year. 15, remember, was the rebuild year from having sold all our products to Valiant, starting to in-license products. The green bar is actually the number of products that we have that we will be marketing. So I think it tops out at about 14. These are all signed. These are all in our portfolio right now in one stage or another, whether it be in regulatory, whether it be in pre-marketing, or actually being marketed. So conceivably, and this is certainly our expectation, is that these revenue projections could be substantially higher as we add other products in the ensuing year. So this is what we believe our peak sales will be for what we have in the bag currently. We're targeting break even in the second half of 2020, probably more October, November of this year, and then profitability thereafter. This is our capital structure. We're close to, if not at, our 52-week high. Again, approximately 75% inside ownership, and we continue. Management, directors, employees, everyone in this company owns shares, and a meaningful amount of shares. And I think that's part of our culture, that we are in many ways an employee-owned company within a publicly traded company. The leadership team, again, myself, Luc is probably our newest. Our CFO has been here for 2 years. The other team has been with us. The rest of them, that's my sister at the bottom, head of VP operations. She was formerly our CFO, but the team has been with us since the pre-Valiant sale days. Our board has grown as a public company. Richard Mackay was vice chairman of Stifel, which was bought by GSK about 10 years ago. Mike Wells was, when Valiant went on its acquisition spree and built itself up to being whatever it is today as Bausch Health. Their first acquisition was a company called Aton, and Mike Wells was the president of Aton. Maureen was headed Shriners Hospital in Canada, and Michel Trudeau was a good addition from this investment community. So we've had a lot of interesting developments happen over the last 2019-20. It's a company is growing not just in revenue wise, but in activity level quite dramatically. This, we expect this to continue going forward. We're very active on the business development front, launching products, growing our revenues for our existing products. It's the team is in the low 30s. We probably will exit the year with a team more in the low 40s and potentially even more. So it's very active from an activity level and obviously from a news flow level. So again, the why to invest in Valeo? The base business brings in recurring revenue that supports the company until some of our branded products. If you look at our base business today, our base is probably 80% of our revenues versus branded 20%, and I would expect that in 3 years that will have reversed itself. But the base serves a very good purpose right now and for the next several years in our business. We are continuing to in-license products. We have a very busy schedule this summer with the launches. We have 4. We think there are a number of other catalysts coming over the months, whether it be approvals, whether it be new products that we're going to be in licensing, break even by the end of 2020. And the one thing I really didn't touch a lot about is one of our products that we're looking at, the product number 4, which is a bioflavonoid. This bioflavonoid, we're waiting for Health Canada approval. We have not talked about it much in the investment community. It has immune support properties, and as you can imagine, in the current health environment, immune support is a very necessary and needed type of product. We'll be disclosing more about this product in the coming months or coming weeks, actually. And I would say that in our revenue projections, there's almost no revenue attributed to this product right now. So everything that, and we think it could be, material product. I mean, we didn't put a number down in the slide deck. It's just because the potential it's right now is just a little, it's very wide. It can be, 60, 6, 10, 30. It has that type of potential. I would just say stay tuned on it. From our in-house lawyer has warned me I can't talk too much about it because we have not disclosed much about it publicly, but it's coming and we're very excited about that product. And that, I hope I stayed within 20 minutes. I was actually working with half a screen because I have the GoToWebinar control panel hiding half my screen. So but I've given this presentation a number of times, and it's pretty well in memory. But I open up the floor now, Jack, to any questions your viewers may have on Valeo
yes.
or the product.
Steve, it was definitely worth waiting to see the whole presentation. We saw it in full color and full sound. We have actually a couple of questions coming in, but you know what? And we have plenty of time right now. So I want to jump in. I want to ask you a few questions myself, and then hopefully we'll get some more people coming in here. So on your slide, you have a term called peak sales. I think you mentioned it a little bit, like how long. So you show like the total market size, and then you show peak sales. How do you determine the difference, and how long does it take to get to that peak sales?
Okay, well, the good question. So the pharma market in the world is a very data-driven market, and I think that most of the viewers out there, unless they're in the pharma business, would really can't comprehend how much money people or companies spend on data metrics. So the simplest data is sales data, and you can get sales data by product, by province, by state, by country, for the world. There's a company called IQVIA, which is the old IMS. So we typically start by looking at a therapeutic area or a specific disease and say, okay, based on IMS data, what is the entire market for all of the products? Then we go from the ground up in terms of how many patients, how many prescriptions, what have you, to get to what we estimate our peak sales could be. And on the branded side, peak sales are typically, and this is not specific to Valeo, it could be for Pfizer, it could be for any pharma company. They generally look at 4 to 5 years for peak sales to materialize, and then those sales stay at roughly at that level for the remaining patent life or exclusivity life of the product. On the non-branded products, what we call the base, peak sale, these are typically products that are already existing in the marketplace. So we're actually launching as generics of these products. So we know the established market size, and we have our own metrics in terms of, well, will we get 25% of the market, 50% of the market, 10%, and that's how we hit that. But those peak sales are typically arrived or achieved within a much shorter time frame, probably 18 to 24 months. So branded, 4 to 5 years. On the sort of generic business, about 18 to 24 months.
So basically, because of all this data that's out there, so you're able to model pretty closely what you can generate.
Yes, it's not just, we can very well model we know number of units by stock keeping unit. We know the physicians that are prescribing these products. So everything is sliced and diced in terms of data. You know which physicians are more likely even to be innovators. So if you have a new drug, which physician category, and specific names in terms of physicians that actually have been shown in the past to be, sort of the leaders in new therapies. So it's a lot of data crunching. It's, as I said, I mean, we're a relatively small company. We do spend a significant amount of money on data, not nearly as much as the Pfizers of the world, but it's quite, and it just makes your sales force more effective by knowing which physicians to target first, which second. So they rank physicians in deciles, 1 to 10, things of that nature. So it's very pharma business. Probably what I guess most people don't really appreciate is how data centric it is. And we don't know anything about the patients. I mean, there is this concept that there's no data gathered on specific patients, so we don't know patient names and things of that nature. But we do know a lot about prescribing habits and the way drugs are used.
Basically, you know all the numbers, so you don't know, but basically, so essentially.
So when we say 8 million on OnStrive in terms of peak sales, we know how many patients we need to get to that $8 million number. We know, generally speaking, in which provinces we're going to get those patients from, again, without knowing the patient, just knowing that, let's say a province like Ontario may have 30,000 Parkinson's patients, and we're going to get 9% of those patients on our drug, things of that nature. So that's how we build up our numbers.
In the whole, I mean, how big is your sales force?
Currently, our sales force is about 9. Okay. As I said, it'll be growing with the launch of Redesca. We'll be adding another 8. But the premise is on the base products, it's very low. There's very little sales activity required. The products have smaller upside, but very little sales and marketing activities required. On the branded products, you do need to have basically feet on the ground or boots on the ground, as we say. But again, if you go back to what I said earlier, if we pick a certain therapeutic area, like let's say neurology, and let's say Parkinson's within neurology, there's about 225 doctors in Canada that are the targets for, and that 225 doctors will represent 85+% of the overall market potential. So it's targeting your sales force to a small number of physicians, relatively small number of physicians. The contrary would be primary care, where you would need 50, 80, 100 sales reps because there's 40,000 doctors they have to see, and you just need that type of activity. So you don't need large sales forces if you're a specialty pharma company, because by definition, you're dealing with specialists, and there's a relatively limited number of specialists in any category.
Okay. Yeah. So it's a very, very focused. Now, are you gonna stay? Are you gonna basically keep the focus on Canada? I mean, is that good? Or is there ever going to be a plan for international expansion?
Yeah. We don't talk in our deck about anything other than Canada. As I said, we have one product in the U.S. That we're launching several weeks from now with a U.S. partner. For the time being, we believe we can grow our business to this $100+ million revenue range, even potentially significantly higher than that in the next 4 or 5 years in Canada only. But you never close your eyes to other opportunities. I mean, a good example is Redesca. This is a product that was a hospital product. We were approached by a company in Asia to be, which was not something we were actively pursuing. 2 years later, we're several weeks away from approval. So you have to be opportunistic, and you have to, your strategy has to be very fluid. I think we, as much as we have to stay focused, we can't be so rigid that we won't consider any other opportunities. That's probably as much as I could say right now.
Okay. And now on your slide, the one where you showed the revenue, I don't know if you want to go back there, but you had kind of the hockey stick. That only includes the products that you currently have launched or about to launch, right? So it doesn't include.
It's pre-launch, about to launch, and in registration. So we have several that are in Redesca, as an example, is still in registration. That means the filing is with the regulatory body, in our case, Health Canada, waiting for approval. So and that's a total of 14 products that we have in either marketed. In some cases they're in production, so we're waiting for the material or the drugs to actually come to Canada so we can start selling them and shipping them, or products, as I say, but they're all signed. So our business development activities we didn't get into. It's hard to talk about things that we haven't signed yet. We have a number of term sheets and what have you that we're in discussion with various companies on. I would fully expect that if we talk again, we'll be talking again sooner than that, but let's say in 6 months, this curve will look different. There'll be more on the green side, and the hockey stick will go up even higher. So that's our.
So this chart only shows the stuff that's basically in the current pipeline. It's not. It doesn't. So in other words, you're not talking about.
That's correct.
new drugs you're going to be bringing in the next 2 years, a year from now, which could be 10x.
The ones that we haven't got ink on paper for, we haven't not included here. It's hard to obviously estimate but typically we're looking at, on the branded side, we're looking at products that can generate $20+ million of revenue. So if we add 2 more products, well, that hockey stick's going to go up by another $40 million. That's essentially the modeling that we're going after.
Steve, how big is this opportunity, like, for specialty pharma just in Canada? Like, what's the potential? Like, let's say 3 years from now, you're going to bring in more drugs. What could be the potential market you're going after?
The Canadian market is a very it's the 10th largest market in the world. It's about $25-30 billion. So it is a significant market. I mean, the U.S. market obviously is the #1 market in the world, and it's hundreds of billions of dollars. But having said that, there is a significant opportunity to build revenues, and I don't think that you can get to a point where you feel that you've captured all of the market, because it is a large market. And I think there's significant opportunity to build market capitalization and attract investors, both from the U.S. and even from Europe, that like a growth story, that like a company is delivering on that growth, and where there's really no ceiling to how big we can become. And our expectation is the company will continue to grow significantly for the future that we can see and the future that we can't see after that, regardless of pandemic or there's always new drugs coming on the market. And we've looked at probably 300 drugs over the last 5 years, and we've got 3 or 4 that we're going to be that are in our pipeline, and we've got a few more we're negotiating. It gives you the extent of how many. It's probably the other thing that most people don't realize is how much innovation there is in the pharma world, and not just from the Pfizers and the Lillys and the Mercks and what have you, but from NASDAQ listed companies, European companies, Asian companies. There's a lot of really interesting products that they have either being launched or in phase 3, and that keeps our BD team, our business development team, very active.
Okay, so you mentioned you look at 300 companies. You have only, so you basically you choose roughly 1 out of 100 that you look at.
Probably in that vicinity, yeah. And there's a number of reasons why. In some cases, the market's just too small for an American company or a European company to want to come to Canada for that, or to have their product here. It's rare. I mean, it happens that there are other companies, sometimes they'll be better suited for a particular drug than we are. But going back, when we look in neurology, where we have a sales force, oncology, when companies come to Canada and they have a product, whether it be for depression or some other neurological condition, we're up there at the top. I'm not saying we're Merck, but Merck's not looking for these drugs because they have their own pipeline. But in terms of independent companies that actually have a presence in a therapeutic area, in the therapeutic areas we've selected, oncology, neurology, and hospital, and more especially neurology and oncology, we're a company that they're going to want to talk to as a potential partner for their new therapy.
Okay, Steve, one last question. We got some, so we're going to jump into the live audience questions. What's the in terms of valuations in the market right now? Like, let's just say for Canada specialty pharma companies, like what are the multiples? Like what are companies valued at? Like how many X times sales?
Probably on the very low end, it would be 4. And again, a lot of it depends on your pipeline, because and that probably is what applies mostly to us. Because if you're looking at a company that's, let's say, doing 10 million of sales, but they're going to be doing 40 million of sales in 2 years, versus a company that's doing 10 million of sales that'll be doing 12 million of sales in 2 years, the multiple is going to be a lot higher, or it's going to appear a lot higher on the former rather than the latter, right? It's just in terms of valuation, because what it kind of is unseen is people are already factoring in the revenues that are going to be generated down the road. So I would say a company that's going to go from 10 to 40 could have an 8 times sales multiple or higher, depending on where it's, what its revenues are going to be in 2 to 3 years. Where the company going from 10 to 12 will probably be a 3 to maybe 4 times sales. So, we look at, in terms of comparable, we think we stack up very nicely against comparables, even with the recent run up in our share price, because of our pipeline. If you factor in and discount back the pipeline, but if we're going to be a $90 million company in 4 years, we'd be trading, the equivalent of less than 1 time sales. So you're looking at, that kind of appreciation. If we go back more to the mean of 4 to 5 times or sales, what have you, you'd be looking at a company. Our expectation is we're going to have a several $100 million market cap in the next couple of years as our products come to market, and as we show that we can execute on building this business into a significant Canadian pharma company.
Okay. Okay, so let's jump into the live questions. Christian is asking, how many more products do you intend to add to the pipeline per year on top of the current this list?
And again, speaking on let's say the branded side, we would be probably looking to add one to two per year. Our expectation is we could probably launch about 2 products per year. So we would like to add, it's almost like a funnel. It is what we actually call it, our business development funnel. So we'd like to sign 2 products per year. And then ultimately, 18 to 24 months later, we're launching those 2 products. So it keeps that cycle going, approximately 2 product launches per year.
Okay. Douglas is asking a couple of questions regarding capital. Do you need to raise any further capital in the short term?
Well, in the short term, no. We just did a very small financing, was not a convertible debenture, a debenture with warrants that was done 2 months ago or 6 weeks ago. It was quite we actually had to limit it to 1.7. We probably could have raised 3, 4. There was a lot of interest in it. We are, so that's in terms of short term. In the longer term, like, probably next 6 months or so, you could expect that we're fielding offers from investment banks literally every couple of days. Analyst coverage we believe will start to happen over the next, let's say, month to 2. And the bankers are circling because the story is becoming more, more ingrained in them. We've been talking to them for a year. They're starting to see the product launches coming. So I think we're just going to sit there and wait and see what kind of proposals come. But, over time, yes, we will raise capital. It's just not something that we will need to do in the short term.
Okay. He's also asking, how much capital do you need to get to the cash flow positive status to break even?
Basically, we've got the capital we need to get to cash flow positive. If I would say, the need, when we look at our internal projections and cash flows and what have you, a lot of that is the requirements would be around new product acquisitions. When you're acquiring the rights to products, and typically we acquire the rights for the patent life of the product or the data exclusivity right of the product, so something in the neighborhood of 10 plus years. The pharma companies don't. The types of deals you do are typically require milestone payments, and the bigger the opportunity, the more money they would require as a milestone payment. In the U.S., the numbers are also, the model works the same way world around. Licensors are looking to recoup some money by licensing products to their licensees. They also want to know the licensee has got skin in the game. If I put a couple of $1 million down when I sign a license agreement, I'm going to put a lot more effort into it than if it's just given to me and I have it as one of many opportunities. So the funds that we're looking for are predominantly for future growth in terms of product acquisition candidates. and obviously to fund some of the working capital that those candidates require as you launch products, being inventory and things of that nature.
Okay, Douglas has a lot of questions, so we'll get to that. Okay, so he's asking time frame to inclusion on the OTC.
I'm looking to my colleague Fred, who's our Director of Communications. We filed literally yesterday. It's generally, I think we're saying between a month and 2 months.
Okay. I've heard from sometimes it could be a few weeks. It could be
giving a little break for holidays, because I know that when we spoke to them later last week, there was a number of them that were on holidays, so that probably delays about a week. But we feel we meet the criteria, and as I say, we're going QB initially, and then ultimately moving up to QX and potentially beyond.
Okay, Douglas was asking about the competition by product and market share.
Well, all competition is in every category, every therapeutic area. There are a number of companies with different products, but I'll just give you just a couple like sort of top line ones. On Strive. So again, first new Parkinson's drug in 14 years. There's literally no competition. There's nothing else that has been launched in 14 years. The drugs that are there are drugs that were developed 18 plus years ago, 17 years ago. Our drug has some interesting benefits in its category. It's a third generation drug, so we believe it'll actually dominate its category and expand its category. And unfortunately, in Parkinson's, even though it's a growing area, Parkinson's will grow in Canada by about 50% in terms of the number of patients over the next decade, which is quite dramatic. As you know, it is a disease of age, and as we age as a population, there'll be more patients with Parkinson's. This is this drug has some really interesting characteristics in terms of how it works within Parkinson's patients. But again, just to say, first new drug. Most of the other companies, the drugs are generic. They don't have sales activities in the field. So we've got 100% of voice when we go in to see neurologists and talk about Parkinson's. When you're looking at Redesca, we're up against three big companies: Pfizer, Lovenox, Sanofi, and Leo. Will be the first of what's known as a biosimilar. So they've launched what are known as biologicals or derived from a biological source. We'll be the first biosimilar, which is treated as a new drug in Canada, their regulatory pathway. We think we can really make a lot of headway here. We should be alone in that marketplace for a while. And as I said, our target 30 to 40 million. We have higher targets internally too, depending on various characteristics and pricing and things of that nature. But this will be our biggest drug that we launch this year. It'll be our biggest drug ever. But it won't be our biggest drug, I think, down the road, where we have some other things maybe in the pipeline that we think could be even bigger than that. So, I mean, again, the goal is to build a fairly substantial specialty pharma company. And, so the opportunities we're looking at are opportunities that can really, using the move the needle kind of analogy, but we need to find those, and those are the ones we are trying to track.
Okay.
I'm not sure that answers. It gives an idea on at least some of our bigger opportunities and how we see competition.
So Douglas is asking, where do you manufacture? He's asking, is all manufacturing done in country?
No, so the two things what differentiates us from, let's say, a traditional big pharma company is no R&D and no manufacturing. And if you look at a lot of NASDAQ listed companies that have multi-billion-dollar market caps, and what they will have is R&D. So that's one difference, let's say, between most of them will not have manufacturing either. So the whole CMO or contract manufacturing organization market has grown substantially over the last 20 years, which is basically an outsourcing market, saying the money is made in developing drugs and selling drugs. The money is not made in manufacturing drugs. I mean, obviously CMOs do make money, but if you look at the context of where the profit is, the CMOs take a very small chunk. So a lot of companies are saying it doesn't, we have no advantage in developing our own internal manufacturing capabilities. They're better off given to experts who do nothing but manufacture drugs. So they become very much specialized. And so that's, we don't expect to change course on that in terms of having either R&D in-house or manufacturing in-house.
Okay. Christian is asking, with no R&D expenses, can we expect Valeo to become a dividend company over the next few years?
You know, the thing with that is it's very, very conceivable. And the reason why is that the you know, generally speaking, pharma companies are very profitable. Once you reach a certain critical mass, the amount of cash they throw off, it can be very substantial. And our revenue models that we have internally show that. So what we're saying is, you know, at some point, if you don't know what to do, in the sense that the growth in cash is exceeding your ability to deploy it intelligently, you're going to return it to your shareholders, and that can be done through, you know, if the share price maybe not is not where you think it should be, through share buybacks or through dividends. But I think it's conceivable. I wouldn't expect to see that, and I wouldn't suggest anyone think that we're going to be doing that in the next 2 to 3 years. But I think if you start, once we hit into that $70-80 million range, and with the type of profitability, it's quite conceivable you'll see some kind of dividend structure as the company gets into what I'd call it a bit more of a mature stage.
Okay. Daniel is asking, are you planning to make treatments for COVID-19?
Are we? Sorry, I didn't catch that question.
Are you planning to make or maybe market treatments for COVID-19?
You know, clearly everyone's looking for a treatment, and it's not just to be, you know, to have a product and you know, generate a lot of sales. I mean, everyone wants to help everyone else just get out of this you know, this kind of situation that we're in. Our low molecular weight heparin, there's a number of clinical trials going on around the world, 2 of them which actually are being initiated out of Canada, looking at how it can be used to assist patients and in their recovery. We talked earlier about a bioflavonoid that has immune support properties. That potentially could be used in helping, you know, your immune system. In the virus has basically 2 activities. It when it enters your body, it creates havoc with a number of your organs, and then that's in the first phase. And in the second phase, your body reacts with what's known as cytokines that try to rush to the fire, if the virus is in the allergy is a fire, to try to put out the fire, and in doing so actually cause inflammation and potential organ damage. So anything that helps, you know, regulate or your immune system actually plays a very active role in COVID-19 and other viral conditions. So we keep looking. That's what we say, and you know, I'm hopeful that if it's not us, someone else finds it. It's not one solution, right? There's not one magic bullet. Like in cancer, there's not one magic bullet. There's an array of treatments that will be used to treat different people at different stages. I could just, you know, maybe it's just easier for me to say, stay tuned to our press releases coming out over the next several weeks.
Okay, Steve, we got about 4 or 5 more questions that came in. You have some time?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so Lee is asking, this is specifically about Redesca, which looks like a serious revenue generator of 30 to 40 million a year. Will all provinces be switching to mandatory usage?
it's happening in Canada. It's our system in Canada for biologics and biosimilars, a system in the sense of the way they're sold and the way they're reimbursed or paid for is very, very different than in the U.S. You can't even compare. We have more of a similarity to the way the Europeans are treating it. So in Canada, as biosimilars, and there are a number of different biosimilars. We're in anticoagulation with low molecular weight heparin. You can imagine Remicade is a biologic, and it has biosimilars attacking its market share. What the provinces are seeing is that they are favoring the use of biosimilars where biologics have been used in the past. And the primary reason is that if the biosimilar can show the same side effect profile or safety profile, that there's tremendous savings to be had. So when we look at our market that we're addressing, which is a $200 million market in low molecular weight heparin in Canada, and that market's been stable for roughly that size for the last 10 years. There's nothing new that's coming along in anticoagulation in the hospital setting that's going to, we believe, change that market in the coming years. So we're looking at about a $200 million market. Will be probably priced around 25% lower than our competing biosimilars, and that's a significant savings for health. We're talking about provinces that are going to be saving tens of millions of dollars a year, which is actually, compared to Remicade, where they're saving hundreds of millions of dollars a year, relatively small. But nevertheless, it falls under the same basket where they're favorizing biosimilars where biosimilars are available. And we are already in discussion with a number of provinces about, even though our product's not approved yet, but some provinces start their discussions before approval, others start their discussions with the manufacturer after approval. But all the ones that actually like to deal before what's known as the NOC date, we're in discussions with, and that's about 5 of the 10 Canadian provinces already. So we expect that when the product's approved and launched, we'll have good coverage and very strong provincial support for the use of the product.
Okay. Lee's got a few more questions. He's asking, do you have plans to uplist to the TSX?
That we started off on the CSE predominantly because we just didn't have enough board lot shareholders. We had a lot of shareholders, but we had discussions with the TSXV. So really, yes, the quick answer is yes. The migration pathway I see is CSE to TSXV or potentially CSE TSX, but the end. The objective in our minds is TSX.
Okay. Yeah, because basically what you have is essentially it's an institutional story, so it's
yeah, very much so. Our market cap is getting there, and as our revenues grow and as we meet the various listing requirements it's quite it's hard to say whether we'll go TSXV first and then TSX or make the jump. It's going to depend on activities that happen over the next really 2 to 4 months.
Okay. So Lee is asking, can you talk more about the potential pipeline? So beyond what you have right now, beyond what you.
Currently, it's first of all, we have a very good business development team. So our business development team, prior to the virus, were traveling all over the world, meeting companies, attending conferences, things of that nature. Again, focused on new innovative therapies in our therapeutic areas, and there are a number of them that are out there. Now we're kind of being pushed back into more of this virtual meetings and what have you, which is still, it's the world, so everyone is adapting to it. But the pipeline is I would say very active. There are drugs to treat different types of cancers. We've got certain discussions going on in the area of depression, which we think is quite interesting in Canada. It's a big market. I mean, depression is $1 billion market in Canada. In the U.S., I don't even want to talk about how big it is in the U.S., but it's huge, and obviously in the U.S. too. So there are a lot of opportunities, and there's some potential acquisitions we're looking at in terms of products or even maybe other companies. I spent quite a bit of time on that aspect of the business. It's our our growth is going to increasing this hockey stick that you see here, going higher and steeper, is going to come from some of these activities that we're undertaking right now. As I said, I think that in the short term, you'll get some more probably information on like our bioflavonoid that we'll be talking about in the next several weeks. In the medium term, there'll be other drugs that we'll be announcing that we've in-licensed, and some are approved in Canada, just not marketed yet. Others we start from scratch. We have to register, and then you're looking 18 to 24 months away from launching. So it's really a whole cross section of different drugs that we're currently in discussions with. But at any time, I'd say there's probably a dozen drugs in our pipeline, and we try to triage them as quickly as we can. But as they make it through, then we spend a lot more time analyzing them.
Okay, so Chris is asking an interesting question. Steve, what would be your minimum buyout if an offer was made this December 2020?
Oh my God, that's a very interesting question, because I haven't thought about that. Let's just say it wouldn't be at the price that the market is today. I would not. I think we've got too much potential that is still not reflected in our share price. That doesn't mean our share price hasn't appreciated quite a bit, and it's done very well in the last 45 to 60 days. But I think when you see, when you kind of live it every day, when you really get a sense it's in of what the opportunity is, that we're just scratching the surface here. We have a long way to go, and there's companies in Canada that we hold as good examples that have market caps, $800, $700 million, and our market cap is not even $100 million. So we have still a long way to go, and I'm still a young guy, so I have a number of years ahead of me to build this to where we want to take it.
Steve, most importantly, you're presenting at the next super stock live stream, and our minimum, we're looking for companies with 10x upside potential. Well, so you need to, you can't even talk about anything below $18 Canadian.
Okay, I buy into that one. Yeah, it's what we have today can take us to a certain level. What we have in discussion in terms of due diligence, negotiations, can take us to a much higher level, and things that or opportunities we have not even. If I look at, let's say for instance, I said we have 10, 12 opportunities we're screening. If I look back 6 months ago, half of them weren't even there. So it just shows you how dynamic this whole industry is. There's a lot of companies developing drugs out there that we even haven't come across yet. And that's what we are always searching for, is not just what's there today, but if it's not out of phase 3, which is that critical phase I spoke about earlier, we're not going to get into deep discussions with them, but we're going to follow them, and we're going to start looking at what kind of results they're getting. And once we feel that it could be a candidate, then we're on it, and we're trying to lock them up in terms of discussion. So if we look at Paladin, which is, a lot of people hold themselves up. There was Paladin sold out, 5 years ago. They sold out for 1.3 billion Canadian, and it was a company that had sub $200 million, I think, of revenue. So, the opportunities are there. It's to build a substantial Canadian company. And as you said earlier, would we go outside of Canada? Well, sometimes opportunities take you outside of Canada. You just never really know. But I don't have a vision of the company, neither does our management team, which is just very narrow in terms of what we want to do. It's focused, but it's not narrow. So that's probably the best analogy of how we're seeing things in the future.
You're opportunistic.
You have to be. You have to be.
I get the impression that you're a wheeler dealer. You're like a deal guy.
Yeah, well, the pharma business, funnily enough, is a deal type of business. You know, all of the companies are dealing, and they don't necessarily just deal on products. They'll in terms of selling products or licensing products, but they'll say, you know, why doesn't your sales force help my sales force sell a product? So you're dealing in that way. It's a very mercantile business. It's been around, as you know, for since the dawn of time, and you know it's things change very rapidly in it, so it's very much it's not just a buy and build and that's all you do is one thing. It's very much it's very dynamic in terms of, you know, we get offered sometimes opportunities um, to even do, you know, distribution for companies. So just handle some of the logistics because we have quite a big storage facility and we have some unique storage capabilities. We've been offered to help on the regulatory side because we have a pretty good regulatory team. So there's always opportunities being presented to us. But as I said earlier, the key is to build around a focused therapeutic areas but you know, a lot of people, you know, we knock on a lot of doors and a lot of people knock on our doors, and that includes big pharma companies, not necessarily just small companies, but you know, the household names, so to speak. I'm not saying we're in discussion with all of them, but we do continue to discuss various opportunities with even companies you'd be surprised that would say, well, why would they be dealing with a small company? Couldn't they do that themselves? But you know, everyone has their priorities, right? And what's one person, what is not the priority of company A can be certainly become a priority for company B if the opportunity is big enough.
So there's a possibility. I mean, look, you have the infrastructure. I mean, you have a track record, a successful track record. So there's a possibility, I guess that anybody reading between the lines can kind of say like, hey, there's a possibility that, you know, you might come across like some, you know, a game-changing new product for the pipeline, which could completely change the picture.
Yeah, I think I mean, for us, remember, a game changer doesn't have to be as big of a product as it has to be for Pfizer. I mean,
right.
To replace $1 billion drug that's coming off patent for Pfizer is a real challenge. Our game changers can be, you know, $100 million drug, and though there's, you know, and that which for Pfizer may have very little interest, you know, in that kind, and it's just not big enough for them. So everyone plays in the food chain, so to speak. But you know, we're right now still considered a smaller pharma growing into a small mid-tier pharma, and then ultimately mid-size pharma. And that's the objective. And you know what happens during that process is, you know, the only thing I can do and our team can do is build the revenues, build profitability. Did I think we would sell our company or our products to Valiant? No. When they first approached us, it was unsolicited. We said no. Then they reapproached us, up the price. We said, okay, given a number of characteristics or factors we were looking at in terms of already looking at other therapeutic areas, dermatology was not core to us anymore. Then we decided to sell. But these things just happen. So I think the key thing is to just build a solid business, and opportunities present themselves, whether it be sales opportunities, purchase opportunities, all kinds of things. And that's just our focus, to keep our eyes or our antennas in the air, waiting to hear if there's things happening. But, you know, the day-to-day is to just, you know, detail doctors, grow revenues, grow profits. And if we do that, the share prices will appreciate and our investors will be happy. And I think today, as we sit here, I think everyone who's a shareholder of Valeo has to be pleased with, you know, with where we are, and where with our performance so far.
Steve, no, we're not going to be pleased unless it's a 10x from here. So, you know,
well,
that's
so yeah, in a year from now, we'll be talking. My goal is to make our shareholders happy, and it goes back to something I said earlier. Remember, we as being the management, the employees and directors own 70+% of the company. So, you know, if whatever our share price goes, if it goes to 10x or what, God knows where, you know, our shareholders are going to be happy, and we'll be happy as shareholders. And that's the key. You know, we all have the same objective, to build a company that's more valuable next year than it is today, and significantly more valuable. And that's everyone, we're not, you look at a lot of other specialty pharma companies in Canada, maybe more so in Canada, but even in the US, and the senior management team has very little equity ownership in the company. They may have stock options, but they don't really have skin in the game. They didn't write checks. And in our company, they did. So there's a little, I think there's a difference there when in terms of attitude, in terms of what drives them. What drives our employees is not their salary, and I mean that pays for the groceries and for a vacation or what have you. But what drives them is the fact that, hey, they can that if we build this company as we expect to build it, that there's significant wealth to be created or significant value, and that's for everyone. Our shares are the same shares that you can buy in the market today. We don't have special voting rights. We don't have anything. We own Class A common shares, and that's what puts us on a par and on a level with all the shareholders in our company, and with our future shareholders, and with hopefully some of your viewers.
Okay, Steve. Last question. You mentioned Paladin, which is I guess like a comp. Now that they were bought out for what, like a? Is it on?
They were bought out for, I think, 1.3 billion.
Okay, and they were doing about 100 million in revenues.
Yeah, the number was slight. I think it was closer to about 200 million in revenue, okay. But it wasn't all in Canada. Some was in South Africa. They were not strictly a Canadian company, but which actually probably discounts the in certain ways, because if someone's looking to buy a Canadian company, their assets that they may have in South Africa are probably of very little interest to someone. So it's just to say that there are, HLS is another example, a company that's got a stock market valuation of 600-700 million, 50 million of sales, probably enterprise value of 800 in terms of their debt. I think it's closer to 800 plus million. It's because people believe there's expectations on some of the products they have in their pipeline. And I think part of the exercise we're doing today is to give some viewers a sense of what do we have in our pipeline, and that we have exciting things. So if you look at our historical sales, well, that shows you we're growing, and it's very interesting. But what you really have to look at is what are we going to be selling over the next 12 months. I
think that investors once they
sorry.
Okay, so I think investors, once they see the pipeline, once they see the execution happening, and it seems like you are executing. They see the infrastructure. A year from now, they're going to be able to extrapolate. Okay, that the potential pipeline. So in theory, you could get that 10x multiple of sales. And I think I'm looking at your chart right now. So in 2020, so 2 years from now, what do you in 2020 in 22? You're going to be doing. Is it 60?
2 years from now, we'll be doing $40 to $50 million of revenue.
40-50 million in revenue. So potentially, and then, but that's just based on the existing stuff, not based on anything else coming in.
That's based on what you see, these green bars and the 14 products. That's based on those 14 products. So anything else would be creative, and obviously it's hard for me to say, well, because at 50 it could be 100. It could be, it just depends on what products we would in-license over the next 2 years. And again, we're not just looking at products, because the cycle is if you in-license a product that has to be registered in Canada, you're looking 18-24 months before you start selling it. But we are also looking at products that are either currently on the Canadian market, where again, example is Yondelis. This is a very small product, but it's very strategic for us, because it really, to be involved in oncology as a relatively small, pharma company, and I say small compared to Pfizer or companies in this category, it's very difficult. There's a lot of risk management issues, of adverse event reporting, the whole pharmacovigilance on in this type of therapeutic area, because these patients are very sick, and many of them will not survive, and all of that has to be analyzed. So we have a doctor that works for us. We've got very strong capabilities to assess interactions of drugs or adverse events in drugs and things of that nature. So Yondelis plays an important part in us having that, and it'll draw other drugs in as we develop these capabilities. So other oncology companies are saying, you've got this, it's very impressive, you've got Yondelis, we're interested in talking to you for Canada. So this is, so there's some drugs that are ready to market. They're just looking for a home. Others have this. So it's really, like, as I said, there's a spectrum of different opportunities that we continue to look at. So what we forecast on is only what's in the bag, in the sense of we have ink on the page on a contract, and either the product is with Health Canada, it's being assessed, whether it's approved. Example of sodium ethylglycolic sodium in the U.S. It's approved by FDA. We're just waiting for our manufacturer in Europe to ship the product to us. That'll probably be in the next several weeks, and we'll start commercializing. Or it's products that are already in the market, vis-a-vis on Strive, where sales are growing on a monthly basis. Where we're even in these times where it's very difficult to detail doctors. Over the last 3 months, doctors have not been seeing a lot of patients, unless it's respiratory related and you're suspected of having the virus. A lot of surgeries have been put off. All the pharma companies pulled their sales teams in-house. They told, you have to contact your physicians through, telephone or Zoom or or any of these other sort of online apps. Very difficult to get the same effectiveness. And what we're seeing is we're actually experiencing growth in the number of patients. So that's pretty interesting metric for us to look at effectiveness of our sales activities.
I think that if investors, they're following kind of the existing pipeline, and that's what you have up on the screen. But if you can, if they see like a trajectory, they see, you're progressing, and then you have a couple of little surprises, all of a sudden your multiple, the valuation will expand, because people will be able to say, wow, this guy's been able to pull off. Let's see what else is coming up. So,
well, our multiple has expanded even recently when you look at, the versus, let's say, April, and a big part of that has to do a lot with the fact that we came out with some significant announcements in terms of the number of products, and people can start saying, it's different when you say I have products in my pipeline and they'll be launched next year. Now we're talking about products in our pipeline that we're launching next week, 2 weeks from now. So these things are going to be accretive to our revenues in the very, very short term. Redesca, when we started talking about it to investors last summer when we went public, we had just signed it. We hadn't even filed yet with Health Canada, and during the fall and spring, you're 6 to 8 months away. We're literally 4 to 6 weeks away from getting approval. So those are other, people now are starting to, as the closer you get to approval, the closer you get to launch and commercialization. I think then the valuation starts to reflect that, because the reality of it becomes more evident and the timing becomes more precise.
Well, the good news, Steve, is that, when I was telling you about, the previous next super stock presenters that went up 10, 20x, it didn't happen overnight. Some of them, it took 12 months. So, you got 12 months to execute here. 12, maybe 18 months.
Thanks for we're going to do our best. We, as I said earlier, we have our game plan and we're executing to it, and we want to grow, and we want to grow quickly, and that's what we foresee, and that's what our charts are saying.
Okay. Any further? Okay, I guess that's it for the questions. So, Steve, thank you very much. I want to thank you for your time. Thank you, everybody in our audience, joining us today with great questions. And we'll look forward to having Steve back shortly. Possibly next time you have news, we'll have you back on another live stream, and we'll see everybody soon.